So this morning, I'm going to talk about right human relations and how to engage in right human relations. As I was putting the talk together, I couldn't help but think, at least part of me was thinking, gosh, if we all would just practice and put these ideas from the ageless wisdom into action, into our day-to-day life, into every relationship that we engage in, how different our personal world would be, how different our family life would be, how different our group life would be. And then I was shifting into a little larger area and thinking, my gosh, how different the news would be. How different the United Nations would be. How different the leaders of all nations as they gather together to talk and make decisions for the rest of us. How different their conversations and dialogue would be. Now, for some, they may think that these ideas this morning are a little old-fashioned. But the new-fashioned ones aren't working either. So, even though they may sound, these ideas this morning may sound a little old-fashioned, practice them and see if you can't bring the old into the new and really begin to make a difference in just your own relationships with your husband, with your wife, with your children. Just start there. And then begin to spread out a little bit, expand your practice of right human relations in with maybe your extended family and then with your group and so forth. Give it some time, give it a few months or maybe a year or 2 or 3 years, but make a notation of the progress that you're making so that you can really measure the difference. So this morning, I'll be giving 2 principles that create the foundation of right human relations. And then I'm going to be speaking about 7 steps to build right human relations. And then if I have time, I'm going to share a little bit about 3 advanced steps to build higher relations with one another. Higher relations would mean moving into the spiritual life and beginning to treat one another from the spiritual point of view. But let's start here. Let's talk about a minute about friendship. I think this is so beautiful. Generally, it is rare to find and keep a good friend unless you yourself are a good friend. In Buddhist literature, there is a story about a one-eyed turtle in the ocean who surfaces every 100 years trying to find a hollowed out sandalwood log which can hold him. Doesn't that create an image? Trying to find a sandalwood log. Every 100 years, this one-eyed turtle in the ocean surfaces. Trying to find a sandalwood log which can hold him. So what does this mean? This story symbolically shows how difficult it is to find a true friend. A true friend. It's not trying to create a collection of a lot of friends like on Facebook. It is trying to find that one true friend. Now, if that turtle finds a log, he's going to be saved and able to live in the light. And so it is with friends who find each other. To find a friend is as precious as finding water while lost in the desert, or winning the lottery if you are in poverty, or finding shelter in the middle of a blizzard or a rainstorm. Some people think that right human relations piece of cake. I already know how to build right human relations, so I don't need to listen to this talk. Well, you're going to be the one that's going to be by yourself, that alienates people from you, who walk away from you when you're approaching them, and you'll wonder, what's wrong with them? Because truly, building right human relations is difficult, and it is a science. And it must be worked on and practiced every single day of our lives. And once you think you have done that, that you've built a good relationship with your spouse and your children and your family and your community, then you're going to move into another culture, other nations, other countries. Maybe you'll have to fly to that country. Maybe you'll have to live in that culture for a while. And you're going to learn that building right human relations with someone of a different culture, of a different language, that lives in a different country is completely different than starting with the country and the family and the community that you grew up in. So it is a science. If you look at the subject of building right human relations like looking into a microscope, you're going to realize that right human relations is a complicated science. And if people do not learn this science and begin to practice it, put it into practice in their day-to-day life, their whole world is going to be in danger of falling into chaos. What I find is that when we sit together and talk about a subject like this, and we're concentrated and we're listening very carefully, and we're in total agreement, they absolutely, I believe this 100%. Then this afternoon, you get into an argument, or you offend somebody, and you're shocked. What's the matter? It's because you didn't keep that tension, that spiritual tension, or that awareness, or engage in observation of the effect that your words are having upon the person you're engaging communication with. So this science is telling us, this science of right human relations is telling us that we can't go to sleep. We can't fall asleep with someone that we've known for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and just default into our mechanical way of speaking. This is what happens in marriage, is that we default into a mechanical way of exchanging ideas, or maybe not even talking with one another. And we lose a sensitivity toward the feeling of another person, toward what it's like to be in their shoes, so to speak. So my challenge to myself and to all of us is, after listening to these 2 principles and the 7 steps and the 3 advanced ideas of building right human relations, is to really put it to the test. Let's really practice it. So when we go to the grocery store this afternoon, or we're cooking dinner for a family, or we're going to work tomorrow morning, that we remember this talk today about right human relations and how important it is. If we do not know how to relate to each other in the right way, the accumulated knowledge that we have built will work against us. So what is accumulated knowledge? It would be like the knowledge we are building here today of how to build right human relations. The knowledge we build in studying the ageless wisdom teaching, all the rays esoteric psychology, esoteric philosophy, or the 7 fields of human endeavor that we gather and learn and accumulate knowledge about politics and economics and religion and science and so forth. If we do not know how to relate to one another in the right way, all the knowledge we have accumulated is going to work against our own interest. And we are seeing this happen today. Right human relations is the fundamental science of human society. To improve our relations means to build the foundations of a healthy global life. A healthy global life to secure prosperity, to progress, and to bring in a new era of greater creativity. This morning's talk brings back to mind the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Remember that? Those 30 declarations? That was initiated by Eleanor Roosevelt, who chaired this council, and ultimately they came up with these 30 declarations of human rights. And this was passed a long time ago, 1948. Anyway, I wanted to share the first declaration of the 30. And if you have time this afternoon, go into your computer, go onto Google or whatever search engine you use, and look up Universal Declaration of Human Rights and read those other 29 declarations. The first one is this: all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience. This is all human beings are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in the spirit of brotherhood. Wow. It is a wow. Can we do this? Okay, here are the 2 main principles. The first one, this is the 2 main principles upon which the science of right human relations is built. The first is every human being has a divine origin. Every human being, it doesn't say, just those that I choose to look at, or that country I choose to relate to, or that religion, or that political field. It says every human principle, every human being, which is one of the main principles, one of the 2 main principles, every human being has a divine origin. Has a divine origin. So the first thing I want you to do is to think about yourself. That something inside of you is of divine origin. Can you do this? If you can do this, this means that you are in touch with the Christ principle within you, and you will never want to violate your divinity, not ever. And when you discover that you don't want to violate that divine origin within you, you're not going to want to violate it in any other human being. Isn't that beautiful? So begin to think today about, wow, there's something in me that's divine. I may be a little cloudy, or there may be cloudiness around this nucleus of divinity, but there's something in me that is of divine origin, and I'm going to honor it. And I'm going to think about it every single day. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to express my gratitude for that divinity that is within me. And when I get in trouble or I have problems in my life, I'm going to call on that divinity within me and ask for help. So that's the first main principle. If we forget the second one, it's okay, because we're well on our way of recognizing the divine origin in ourselves and others. Here's the second one. As we engage in the practice of right human relations, we begin to release the highest potential in ourselves and in others, and bring that highest potential into manifestation. So this is the reward, first of all, of recognizing the divine origin within ourselves, then practicing right human relations with others, and of course within ourselves, that it's going to release the highest potential within ourselves and others and bring it into manifestation. If we understand these two principles, we will gradually improve our relationship with our own diverse nature. And we do have a very diverse nature, a very complicated personality, because we have, habitual patterns that our physical body engages in. Emotions. We have such an amazing range of emotion. It's just hard to keep track of it from 1 hour to the next, to the next, to the next. And not to mention our mental body, our thoughts. How do we get our actions and our emotions and our thoughts together in harmony? We must gradually improve our relationship with our own diverse nature and with other human beings and with life in general. So this is part of our day-to-day job. We don't get paid for this kind of a job, but we get rewards. And in getting rewards, we also gain interest. Interest accumulates. So when we need grace, let's call it, this is a familiar word, that interest will be paid off immediately. We don't even have to do any manipulation. We don't have to go to the bank. We don't have to sign a lot of papers to get paid, to get that interest we earned. It will just be given immediately. Now, as we move away from these two principles, we become more creepy. I know. It's an interesting word. As we move away from the practice of these two principles, we become more and more separative, antagonistic, and destructive. As we apply these two principles, we come closer and closer to each other with an increasing understanding, increasing love, increasing respect, increasing creativity. We begin to collaborate together. So right human relations is just like climbing a mountain. Now today it's going to be pretty hard to climb that mountain called Thumb Butte. It's just even hard to climb up my driveway. But I just think this is a good, really, really dramatic but good example of what it is like to build right human relations. Meaning, if you don't have spiked shoes and you're trying to climb a snowy mountain, you're going to slip back. And then you're going to start climbing ahead again. And then you're going to slip back. And then you're going to continue to go up there. And it'll take forever to reach the summit. But the reward and the accumulated interest is worth it, because as we climb toward the summit, we move closer and closer together until we finally meet each other and become, we're going to become one. That doesn't mean we lose our individuality or that we have to give everything up to that other person. It means that we are in harmony, that we integrate, that we understand, that we love, that we respect, that we can be together in joy. That's what it means when we come closer and closer and closer together as we're reaching that summit. And that's when we become really creative people. We discover not only our own divine potentials, but the beauty and glory hidden in each human being as well. Right relations start when we see a value in ourselves, and we see a value that's hidden in our friend or hidden in our spouse. So as we try to climb this summit together, we begin to see a value in another person that we didn't know was even there. And we begin to recognize a value within ourselves that we didn't know was even there. It may be when you're shoveling your driveway and you see your strength and your power and your ability to endure. And you think, wow, look what I'm doing. See, it can be something simple like that. Or when you're writing a piece of poetry and you think, wow, I really value my ability to write in such a way that it will inspire others. And then what happens when you begin to write poetry, you begin to respect the poet in another human being who may not even know that they have any talent in writing poetry. And you begin to recognize that value. And as you recognize that value in them, they begin to almost magically manifest it. It's like reading, Torkim now has 3 poetry books in print. And when that first poetry book came out, I noticed people began writing poetry, imitating what he had written. Even the same meter, I think it's called, that he was writing in, that he wrote his poetry in. See, they saw the value in his poetry, and they were so inspired, they thought, I can do that. We must value ourselves. If we do not value ourselves, then what does this mean? This means we are not placing a value on that divine presence within us. And when we cannot see that we have a divine presence within us, then we put limitations. And every part of our life we begin to limit. We think, oh, I can't do that. Well, why would that person like me? Why would they love me? I don't even love myself. So you've got to start to place a value on yourself first. And we can do this humbly by recognizing that each of us has a divine origin right within. So right human relations starts from our own nature, from the world of our own being. We must get right with ourselves before we can get right outside of ourselves. We must get right with ourselves before we can get right outside of ourselves. We must establish right relations between our actions and our emotions, between our emotions and our thoughts, and between our thoughts and our motives. And ultimately, we must get right with that divine source within us. This is why when you wake up in the morning, every single morning, or when you're at odds with yourself during the day, or at odds with someone else, that you stop and recognize that divine origin within you. It will change your life. And it will change the life of the people that you love, that you live with, that you surround yourself with on a day-to-day basis. So this is not always an easy job. But we must integrate and align our nature and fuse our nature with the source of the principles. And this is a little formula that some of us do know and try to practice. There are basically 5 principles that we can use as the source of building right human relations, which is beauty, goodness, righteousness, joy, and freedom. Beauty, goodness, righteousness, joy, and freedom. So if you want to write some poetry, take those 5 principles and write a poem on beauty. But you've got to practice what you're putting into your poem. And the same with goodness and righteousness and joy and freedom. So this is the foundation. If we are not integrated physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, then we're not going to be able to experience right human relations. When we are divided within ourselves, the interests of those separate parts control our actions and our thoughts and our feelings. For example, selfishness and self-interest are direct result of these broken parts. In the teachings, these broken parts are called cleavages. But when we are integrated, aligned, and fused with the higher values, these higher values within our capital S self, our true self, with our divine source, we evoke greatness and beauty and respect from those with whom we come in contact. That's the first step toward right human relations, is to put our own being into order and harmony. And then to put our relations in order and in harmony. So right human relations is it's like an orchestra playing a symphony. Each musical instrument must be in tune with the others. An instrument cannot be part of the orchestra if it is out of tune with itself. This is why if you've ever gone to a concert a little early and you see all the musicians coming onto the stage and they sit down and it sounds like nothing but chaos because there's playing. Every instrument, every musician is playing a different note. And then almost magically, they all come together and they're sounding one note, which is typically concert A. And I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful because you're hearing the violins and the cellos and the string basses and the trombones and the flutes and the piccolos and, all coming together and sounding this one beautiful, pure note. That's what we are striving to become, that we can be in tune with ourselves and in tune with those around and about us. An inharmonious person cannot see things as they are. It's a very profound statement. An inharmonious person cannot see things as they are. A harmonious person sees things clearly, makes right decisions in his or her relations with others. A harmonious person creates harmony within those who are pure and clear. A harmonious person will create harmony with those who are pure and clear. See, when you are, let's say that your professional life, your job, maybe you're a scientist and you're engaged in research and you need a grant to continue your research. And you're very clear with your vision, you're very clear with what your goal is and what your purpose is and where you are headed, but you need some money to fund, that purpose. And your financier comes in and talks to you and says, well, I think you need to go this way, and I think you need to go that way, and maybe you go backwards for a little while, and if you'll do those 3 things for me, then I'm going to fund your grant, your need for a grant. What are you going to do? Are you so desperate for the grant that you will compromise your purpose? See, a harmonious person, a clear thinking person will say thank you, but no thank you. And not spend a lot of time arguing, with why they're worth being funded. It is a waste of time because why? The inharmonious person has to create harmony in their nature before they can see things clearly. Some people keep their jobs for years when they're working, when their boss is an inharmonious person. They don't do it. Life is too short. You'll find another job where you have a boss that the 2 of you are in harmony together. And being in harmony together, you'll be clear with your vision and pure with your motive and pure with your intent. So harmony attracts co-workers, those who will cooperate with you and bring beauty to the world. Okay, now here are the 7 steps. I told you there were 7 steps, so here they are. I don't have a long time here, so I'm not going to elaborate, but I'll give you the 7 steps, and you'll be able to remember most of them. If you're making notes, just write 1 or 2 words down for each of the 7 steps, and then you can go back and recreate the whole sentence. So the first one is try to communicate. Try to communicate and do not sever communication lines. So if you're married and if you're having problems and you're just so angry that you walk away and you don't even speak to that person for 3 days, don't think this is the way to build right human relations. Do just the opposite. Don't sever your communication lines. Okay, the next is either send or present surprise gifts. And you don't even have to tell them who it's from if you're going to send them a gift. 3, always speak highly about your friends. And you might say, wow, that's really a tough one. Well, then they're not your friend. You want to surround yourself with friends. Your circle of friends. So always speak highly about your friends. Number 4, do not immediately respond or react to any criticism. Just keep an open mind and then investigate it. Number 5, do not report any bad news to your friends. Like, oh my gosh, yesterday, midday, I was so down. It was just, something strange was going on. I'm on a number of forums, on internet forums, and people's pets were dying, and I won't even go into how they died. It was so horrible. So horrible. And they were sharing this with all their friends, and And I was so depressed, I turned off the computer, if you can imagine that. And I can't deal with this. You know, because we all have sadness, we all have pain, we all have suffering. Let's share our joys with one another. Now, you can take your, you know, that special friend that one-eyed turtle was, you know, trying to find that hollowed out sandalwood log. And if you have a friend like that, then that friend will lift you out of your misery. You know, but don't share your misery with your forum friends. Just don't do it. Okay. Number 6. Never lie to a friend and never deceive him or her. And number 7, send good thoughts to your friends as frequently as you can. And that friend can be alive or can have passed on. Some of us every morning take members of our group that have passed on and we send our love to them and bless their soul every single day. If you can put these 7 steps into practice, you will see that they are so practical and so powerful that if put to use, they're going to bring you amazing results. Okay, I have about 2 or 3 minutes left here. I don't see that we have any questions from our webinar, so I'll move on. Okay, the first advanced step does have to do with communication. In the Signs of Right Human Relations, which we can take to create a better future for ourselves and for our family and for our group, is communication. But this kind of communication, this is what makes it advanced, is a physical and emotional, mental and spiritual communication. Meaning we are speaking with one another, to one another on all 4 of these levels. For example, when people come into me for counseling, we are speaking physically, emotionally, mentally, because we can hear one another talk, we can feel one another, we can see one another's body language. But the most important kind of communication that's taking place is that I am communicating with that person's soul. That's advanced communication. So communication must be progressive. For example, in your family, try to communicate with your spouse physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And you can act as if you are speaking to their soul. You can act as if. So what does that mean? It means that if you are speaking to them as a soul, you are recognizing the divine origin in their nature. Human communication will be from heart to heart, from soul to soul. This will eliminate the chaos of emotion and thought. Sorry about that. We have a new lectern here and we're still trying to put it all together. I'm dealing with stuff up here. It needs to be a little bit higher. My notes are rubbing all over. Anyway, communication. So communication must be very sincere, very sincere. No attacking. You cannot express your love to your spouse if at the same time you're attacking them. I remember as a little girl one time that my mother was so mad at me. She was so mad, and all I could remember is her face was all screwed up in anger. And she was saying, "But I love you." "But I love you. But it hurts me more than it hurts you." I thought, You don't know how this is hurting. So don't attack, don't insult, and don't criticize. To keep a relationship together, you must be able to talk very clearly and openly and create an understanding. In other words, you must be able to lay out all your cards in front of each other and then talk very clearly and openly and create an understanding with no attacking, no insults, no criticizing. So open communication is essential for cooperation. Communication is opening your hearts to each other and observing each other as you are. Okay, I'm going to jump through some of this so I can get the other two in. The second step is understanding. Unless we understand other people, we cannot establish right human relations. And that's all most of us want, is just to be understood, right? Just to be understood. To understand, however, this is a little different. To understand means to see the cause of another person's pain, the cause of their behaviors, and address that cause. But you have to be very careful here that you really know the cause of their behaviors, the cause of this and that. Unless we see the cause, then we're not going to understand a behavior or an event. And the third is freedom. There is no right human relations if there is no freedom in your relations. In other words, if you're going to impose your ideas, impose even the greatest concept that you have, if you're going to impose it on your friend, on your spouse, on your child, then that's not freedom. You're forcing. You're forcing them to agree with you. Problems emerge when people force themselves upon each other. When there is imposition, you cannot develop right human relations. It's as simple as that. So, freedom expands our consciousness and makes us stand on our own feet. So let me end with this. It is important that we do not impose ourselves on others. Imposition creates reactions and disturbances in relationships and eventually results in rejection. Also, try not to impose your moods, your image, your beliefs, your religion, or your political, social, or your nutritional viewpoints on others. God help me. Anyway, let people search for, find, and follow their own path.